This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
The first weekend of the NFL season is here, and I can't be more excited. I mean, I got college game day finishing up on the TV behind me. It's a beautiful thing to have football back in whatever capacity or form that it's in. This is Sports Bash Saturday, only here for an hour today. We got Yankees versus Orioles coming up next at 1 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. And don't look now, but the Yankees are in a little bit of trouble, folks. I mean, they can't stay healthy. Right now, they're 5 games behind the Rays. They're only about 2.5 games ahead of the Orioles in the standings. The Yankees have dropped to 24-21. I mean, if I were to tell you that the Yankees only had 2 more wins than the Phillies this year before the season started, half of you would have told me I'm crazy. The other half of you probably would have shrugged your shoulders and said, 2020, anything can happen. Well, the Phillies are 22-20. The Yankees are 24-21. What gives? Man. So we got Yankees, Orioles coming up at 1 o'clock right here on 97.3 ESPN, playing the Orioles. Yankees need to start winning. We got a lot of football to talk to as well because we got Reid Fowler. You've seen him on NFL Network's Good Morning Football. DraftKings NFL Analyst. He'll join us coming up at 12:30. Get more into the NFL Week 1, more into DFS. You setting your lines for fantasy football. We talked with Andy McNamara on Thursday. We got Reid coming up at 12:30 today, so we got you covered on all the bases. Also, I gave you my picks for college football and NFL yesterday. I'll run it back on the NFL picks a little bit later in the show, and I'll give you my full slate of picks for the NFL Week 1 as well. Last year, we went 70% on the NFL picks. Also, give you my quick pick predictions for the NFL season overall. But we got to start with the Philadelphia Eagles because the news came down yesterday. If you didn't see the news, you got to go over to 973ESPN.com for all the details. But the news dropped yesterday afternoon, and I can't be more excited about it. Yes, Jalen Reagor is going to play. That's right. Jalen Reagor is on track to play this Sunday. He was a full participant at practice for 2 straight days. Okay? For 2 straight days, he was on the field and he was practicing in pads, full participant. And the reason why this is so significant, and we'll get to the 3 guys who are questionable right now in just a moment, but what makes this significant is the fact that Jalen Reagor fits the profile of exactly what this team needs out there on the football field. He fits the profile of what this team needs compared to not just last season, but the last couple seasons. Let's be realistic. The last couple of years, the Eagles' offense has been frustrating. And I've heard the opinions multiple times about the reason why it's frustrating. Okay, I've heard 100 times now, well, you know, if Frank Reich and John DeFilippo were here, things would have been different. And I have to be brutally honest with you. The more time goes by, the more I don't believe that. Because watching the Eagles play the last couple of years, I felt like they were missing playmakers. And it didn't really matter what the play calling was. All the play calling could have done is made the team a little bit better or a little bit worse, right? You know, yeah, you want to score more points. But you need the talent to score those points, right? You need the talent to go out there and get the job done. And I don't believe for 1 minute that 2 coaches could have made up for the fact that you didn't have speed multiple times in the last couple of years. Alshon Jeffrey's been injured multiple times in the last couple of years. You've had a lot of issues when it comes to the talent on the field. And what did the Philadelphia Eagles do? They went out and drafted a receiver who was a dynamic weapon in college. A guy who himself accounted for 50% of his team's scoring in the last couple of years at TCU. He was that big of a part of that team. He's a guy who can do kick and punt returns. He's a guy that can play every position on the offense. He can play the X. He can play the Y receiver. He can play in the slot. He can do end arounds. You could even line him up in the backfield and split him out if you wanted to. You haven't had this kind of weapon in a long time. One of the things that made a player like a Brian Westbrook so valuable for the Eagles is because he could do anything. And Jalen Reagor is a little closer to a Westbrook than a Deshaun Jackson. Think about it this way. When Deshaun Jackson came out of college, he was about 170 pounds on a good day, right? Jalen Reagor coming out of college weighs about 40 pounds more than Deshaun Jackson when he came out of college. Reagor is thicker and more explosive and more power to his run game than Deshaun Jackson coming out of college. That's what you're getting on the field. How many times have we complained about the Eagles don't have playmakers? The Eagles don't have guys who can create separation. The Eagles don't have a guy who can get on the field and make guys miss, right? And now you do. He's a full participant, and he's on track to play this Sunday. And that is exciting. PlaySugarHouse.com. Text board is open 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. Now, there are 3 guys questionable, and I think that's where the concerns start. And as I told Billy Schweim earlier in the locker room here on 97.3 ESPN, anytime I see the word hamstring, I'm concerned. Okay? Miles Sanders and Derek Barnett both are questionable with hamstrings. They were both limited participants. I'm always concerned when I see the word hamstring on an injury report. When I see shoulder, all right, that could be anything. There's a lot of things going on in the shoulder joint, right? Yeah, that could be a labrum, that could be an AC joint, that could be anything, right? I see quadriceps. I'm not 100% concerned because that could be a bruise for all I know. It could be maybe even more of a knee than it is even a quadricep situation. But when I see hamstring, I feel like hamstring is like the one injury that freaks me out the most when it comes to an athlete, because I've seen so many times guys try to come back from a hamstring injury too soon, and it doesn't work out for them. And they either injure it worse or re-injure it shortly thereafter. So I'm way more concerned right now about Barnett and Sanders than I am about anybody else on this list of guys. Because we already know that Hargrave and Alshon are not playing. Javon Hargrave, he's been out for a while with that pectoral injury. Alshon Jeffrey coming back from the Liz Frank injury. I always figured those guys might not be available this week. I was not getting my hopes up for Reagor to come back, despite all the tweets he keeps saying that I'll be back soon, I'm going to be out there. But to see him and Clement out there gives me some relief that the offense is going to have some of the important players it needs on the field. But the Sanders and Barnett hamstring injuries are the 2 things I think we need to watch out for. Because when you think about the Philadelphia Eagles, you don't want to force anybody to come back too quickly. The last thing you can risk is anybody going out there and coming back too soon. We saw it with Deshaun Jackson last year. Look, the D-Jack said it the other day to the media. He said, if I knew back then what I knew now, I would have gotten that core muscle surgery immediately and not wait around and not try to rehab. And I think that Deshaun Jackson's experience, right, and other players on the Eagles are warning signs for this team to not get silly and not get risky with Barnett or Sanders. Sanders is going to be your bell cow. Sanders, as I mentioned earlier, was top 10 in the NFL in all-purpose yards. This is a guy who was catching the ball, running the ball. He was top 3 on the team in receiving yards and receptions last year. That's how important he is to this offense. He is a multi-dimensional weapon. You don't want to risk losing him for multiple weeks if you bring him back too soon. Barnett, I think you can get away with Barnett for at least a week or two. I feel like if you don't have Derek Barnett this week against Washington, I don't think you're going to lose too much of a defensive line threat, because Washington's strength may be their defensive line, but their offensive line is a bit of a question mark. I don't have a lot of confidence that offensive line is going to shut down the Eagles' D-line at all tomorrow. And I think that Brandon Graham and Vinny Curry and Josh Sweat and all those guys, they will be good enough. So there's no reason to bring back Barnett too soon. I want Barnett more so for the Rams game next week, for the 49ers game in a couple weeks from now, and then the Steelers game and the Ravens games after that. I need a healthy Barnett for those games, because those games you're going to need all hands on deck, because the Rams still have a potent offense. The Bengals have some nice offensive weapons too. Joe Mixon, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd. Joe Burrow may be a rookie, but you got to watch out for those offensive weapons. Has there ever been a rookie quarterback who came into as good of a offensive skill set situation as Joe Burrow? I can't think of a guy drafted as high as Burrow was who walks in with an all-pro caliber receiver in A.J. Green, a very good complimentary number 2 receiver in Boyd. You could argue that Joe Mixon may be one of the top 10 running backs in the NFL, honestly. So you're walking into a very good situation. I mean, this may be the best situation a top draft pick has walked into since maybe Peyton Manning. When Peyton Manning had Marshall Faulk in the backfield with him. I mean, that's the first one that comes to my mind. So you're going to need your defensive fastballs, as they like to call it. You need your guys who are going to be able to rush the passer like Barnett, because that's what Barnett's specialty is. Barnett, he's not like Vinny Curry. He's not as well-rounded as Vinny is when it comes to the all 3 downs, stopping the run, getting to the pass rusher, getting around blocks, making sure you absorb some guys to let other pass rushers get to the quarterback. No, Barnett is he's like a 100-meter, 200-meter sprinter when it comes to pass rushing. He is a go-get-it kind of guy. That's his skill set. And if he's got a hamstring issue, I don't want to see him coming back too soon, because I need him for the rest of this schedule. The 49ers have a very good offensive line. The Steelers have a very good offensive line. The Ravens, the way they run their offense, it covers up the weaknesses of their offensive line, the little that they have. So you need a full complement. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm not looking for Barnett or Sanders to play tomorrow versus Washington. Of course, you can hear all the action, Eagles versus Washington, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Pre-game coverage starts tomorrow at 10 a.m. with Billy Schweim in the locker room with Hunter Brody, and then Merrill Reese and Mike Quick on the call at 1 p.m. right here on your home for Eagles football, 97.3 ESPN. Of course, today on 97.3 ESPN, we got a little different kind of football because we have Clemson versus Wake Forest tonight at 7:15 p.m. And I love college football. I'm a huge believer in college football. But I have to be honest with all of you, and you know me, I'm never one to shy away from the truth and the facts. This college football season is going to be very tumultuous. I'm very concerned about how this college football season is going to go. I have to tell you that when I saw the news earlier this week about a couple of the games being postponed, the first thing that came to my mind was you can't ask college kids to have the same level of responsibility and etiquette that you would an NFL player to. In the latest round of testing, the NFL only had one positive test. So as of right now, it looks like there's only going to be one guy who would miss week 1 of the NFL season due to a COVID positive test. On the flip side, you've had 20 players from multiple teams testing positive. And they're not all symptomatic, right? They're not all guys who are going to have potentially what we would hope not, obviously. But usually if you're asymptomatic, it means you're not going to have long-term concerns when it comes to your health. And when I'm looking at college football, I'm just keeping it real with you. I am genuinely concerned how many college football games we get in this year. Because Virginia Tech, that game is getting postponed. TCU, SMU, a huge rivalry, that's getting postponed. Memphis, they had a huge slew of positive tests. Their schedule is in flux right now. We've heard that the biggest hotbeds right now for positive tests with COVID are not the areas that we thought it was going to be. It's college campuses right now. The rest of the country actually has declining rates, except for college campuses. And I got to be honest with you. I'm not one of these people to, jump up and scream, warning sign, warning sign. What was that old TV show? Danger, Will Robinson, Danger. Space Odyssey, that's what it was. I'm not that guy. But I'm just being perfectly frank with you. As much as I love college football, I am preparing myself for the reality that we may not see as clean of a schedule as we had hoped. And until all of these conferences get some sort of uniformity and some clarity on their protocols and everybody buys into said protocols, I don't have a ton of faith that college football is going to have a very fluid season. I'm sorry, it's not going to have a season that is going to go very well. It's going to be fluid. It's going to be a roller coaster ride. It's going to be, frankly, a bit of a mess. I'm just being honest with all of you because I look at the NFL, I look at the professional sports, and I see how responsible they're being, and I see the lengths they're going to make sure everything is on the up and up. College hasn't done the same thing. And you look what the Pac-12 has right now in their hands. They have the rapid testing set up to start next month. The Big Ten is close to having the same thing. But not every conference has the rapid testing and the protocols all situated and ready to go. Some of the conferences do, but not all the conferences do. And until there's more uniformity with this thing, we're going to see a tumultuous college football season. It's going to look similar to the baseball season with games being postponed and games being pushed around. And as much as I love college football and I'm a huge football fan that I am, I'm already mentally preparing myself for the reality that you're going to see some sloppy football and you're going to see some irregular schedules and you're just going to have to get used to it. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. The other thing I wanted to hit on before we get to break, we still have Reid Fowler from DraftKings, NFL Analyst, coming up to get into our fantasy football DFS lineups, preview week 1 of the NFL season. He's coming up at 12:30. I wanted to address a story that came out as well yesterday. And to be honest with you, I usually don't get too bent out of shape about anything. I'm not the guy to get too up or down about anything that I see online or in the media or anything like that. It's just not my style. But when I saw the report that came out about the ratings for the season open between the Chiefs and the Texans, I honestly was angry. And I'm really getting sick and tired of people out there trying to manipulate you folks who go on to these news sites and jump on looking for information and are completely lying and manipulating you left and right about these viewership numbers. So the story came out, I think it was like the middle of the day yesterday, that, well, the television ratings were down for Chiefs-Texans compared to past opening nights for the NFL. And there were various salacious and manipulative headlines out there about what happened. So I want to bring you a little clarity here. So in 2020, this year, there were 20.3 million viewers watching the game on Thursday night. In the previous year, 2019, it was 22.7 million viewers. So it was down roughly 2.4 million viewers. And the headlines are coming out saying NFL is down in viewership. People are mad at the sports. People are mad at the NFL. And it's completely a load of hogwash. And here's why. Do you know what else was going on Thursday night? Well, first of all, you had the Lakers-Rockets game. So you had a playoff game. You had the U.S. Open going on at the same time. A semifinal, to be exact. By the way, Serena Williams lost that night. Naomi Osaka, the number one tennis player in the world, was playing that night. The NHL Western Conference Finals was on that night. The NFL in the past usually owns Thursday night, not just for the opening week, but for the majority of the season. They usually typically, they don't have competition. There's no playoff games going on. Baseball is a month away usually in the playoffs. The NBA and the NHL doesn't usually start until October anyway. The NFL usually has the night all to themselves. If you take the viewership of the Lakers-Rockets combined with the U.S. Open women's semifinals, along with the Stars Vegas game from Thursday night. So those three sporting events, do you know what the viewership combined for those three sporting events was? I'm glad you asked. The viewership for those three sports combined was almost 5 million. So you had actually 20.3 million people watching the NFL game and almost 5 million watching the other three sports. So the viewership isn't down because people were mad at the players or protests or Black Lives Matter or whatever salacious headline someone wants to put out there to manipulate you into thinking. You know where the viewers were? They were watching other things. Because guess what? There are people who want to watch the Lakers-Rockets game. And there are people who want to watch the Stars versus Vegas series. And there are people who want to watch the greatest women's tennis player of all time, Serena Williams. You're going to tell me that all that, what is it? Let me get the number right because I don't want to get accused of anything, that the loss of 2.4 million people had nothing to do with the NBA playoff game, the NHL playoff game, or the Women's U.S. Open. It had nothing to do with it. Oh, and by the way, 20.3 million people watching. You know that's more people than watched an average episode of Game of Thrones on HBO. More than the average number of people who watched Breaking Bad during its peak on AMC. 20.3 million people. But nobody likes the NFL. People are mad at the NFL. 2.5 million people watched the Lakers-Rockets game on Thursday night. Now, the Lakers-Rockets game, that was the lowest watched Lakers game of these playoffs so far. Did you know that the Lakers games on television have been the most watched games on television every night they've been on except for Thursday night? Why? The NFL happened. Patrick Mahomes happened. Every other night, the Lakers have been the most watched show on television. So for all the people who are out there saying people aren't watching sports, people are mad at the athletes, I'm not ignoring the fact that there are people who are frustrated and unhappy with the state of things going on in the world we live in today. And that part of their reaction to how things are going is to turn off the television. I'm not denying that one bit. But we can't ignore the fact that people are still watching sports. And if you think they're not because some manipulative person on social media or on a specific website, media outlet, that is trying to manipulate you into thinking otherwise, do a little research. Don't trust every headline you see out there. Because I'm telling you, the numbers when it comes to live watching along with digital streaming of sports say otherwise. People are watching sports. They're just not watching it at 3:30 in the afternoon. Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. Coming up next, we'll talk more NFL, fantasy football, DFS, and more. Reid Fowler, DraftKings, NFL Analyst, next.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN. Today being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you. Visit them online at gmslaw.com. We'll get more into the NFL right now. We got Reid Fowler, DraftKings NFL Analyst, joining us down. Don't forget about the DraftKings NFL pool. Listen, you can win up to $100 million in giveaways with their free-to-play Survivor Pool Week 1. It's so simple. I even got involved in it, so you know it can't be that complicated. Listen, you can compete for a shot at $1 million by entering the $1 million Football Survivor Pool. All entries will be instantly given a free reward between $5 and $25,000. One lucky fan will be guaranteed to win $1 million in cash simply by opting in to the Golden Ticket giveaway. And let me tell you something. When I mean that it's instantly rewarded, I jumped on this on DraftKings, and I was instantly rewarded $50 into my account. So this is no BS. This is legitimately, you play, you opt in, you get a chance. I already got my Survivor Pool picked in. It was the Chiefs. It was pretty simple. So if I can do it, you can do it. Jump on DraftKings right now with their Survivor Pool. And speaking of DraftKings, Reid Fowler joins us on the Boardwalk kind of hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Reid, how's it going?
Good, Josh. This is exciting, right? This is exciting news. I'm sure it's even more exciting for guys like Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara. Just minutes ago have signed big deals, or at least they're going to be signing their extensions. And so I feel great, but they have to be feeling really, really good.
Well, also considering the fact that both of those guys were dealing with some injury issues, and it seems like we used to live in a world where running backs don't get paid, right? Well, I guess what? Running backs are getting paid. And by the way, Cooper Kupp is signing a deal as well. So everybody's getting paid right now. It's like an Oprah show.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Kamara, 34.3 guaranteed. Christian McCaffrey got 30, right? Ezekiel Elliott, 28. Dalvin Cook, 28. Even Lev Bell and Derrick Henry, they're getting their money as well. So, it looks like this is kind of what we saw too. And I don't know if it's too much of the same thing, but this is what we saw with wide receivers. Is that before this class of wide receivers came through, and then probably next year as well, where we're going to have a solid wide receiver class out of college football. We'll see what comes of the college football season now, but we're probably going to start to see more and more of that as time progresses because teams want to secure their running backs.
Yeah, and of course, you think about those two teams, one of the things they both have in common is they both have teams that invested a lot in their defense already. So if you're already investing in your defense, you got to make sure the rest of the team around them is all set up because defense is all well and good, but if you can't score any points, you got some problems.
Yeah. Well, it says Stephon Diggs gone too, right, in Minnesota. You're going to vacate a ton of production, not literal, but also to how the defenses prepare for your offensive scheme, right? Olabisi Johnson is someone that that a lot of people are talking up, right? Justin Jefferson, the rookie, he's clearly going to need to take a step up. Irv Smith Jr. is someone that a lot of people are keeping their eye on. But Dalvin Cook is the centerpiece of that offense, right? You also look at Philadelphia with Miles Sanders dealing with his own set of injuries. Is he someone that now is going to be the centerpiece of that offense? We see Jalen Reagor is someone that is getting healthier much quicker than we expected. And so now when you start to look at the landscape of the NFL, and especially this year too, right, Josh, you have to make sure that consistency and continuity is front and center of your plan, right? You want to make sure that your guys are feeling confident and that your system is a continuation of what we had last year to this year. And so you're probably going to see a lot of these organizations making sure that their centerpieces on their offense and defense are going to be secured for years to come.
Now, speaking of that consistency, as somebody, whether you're drafting for a year-long fantasy football, as many of us did, or if you're jumping on DFS tomorrow for the NFL, do you factor in that history? Because, for example, Doug Peterson, he's been in Philadelphia for a few years. The offense is well known. Sean Payton, for example, been in New Orleans for over 10 years. Consistent. We don't 100% know what some of these other new coaches and coordinators are bringing to their team. So as somebody who's selecting, do you have that in the back of your mind at all?
A little bit, right? A little bit. Kind of the same sense of how much of us really have the bye weeks, penciled in to say, oh, wait, I don't want to pick this, wide receiver 2 because he has the same bye week as my tight end, right? We kind of have in the back of our mind that probably around round 5 or 6, you're like, oh, shoot, I got 3 or 4 guys that are going to have the same bye week. But, you have to factor it in a little bit. And the reason, or I guess the procedure of how in season long I factor it in is more so the quarterbacks and the rookie wide receivers that are going to be in new systems. So Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is in a good spot in Carolina against the Las Vegas Raiders at home, right? I wouldn't be drafting Teddy Bridgewater because I'm not entirely sure how he's going to play just yet. But for DFS, I'm really looking at that game to be a higher, probably one of the highest game totals, a sneaky over in that. I believe it's around 47 right now, 47.5, 48, just around that number. But I'm looking at that as a potential swerve spot over the chalk of the other quarterback wide receiver stacks, Carson Wentz, Deshaun Jackson getting a ton of buzz in the DFS world because Deshaun Jackson, we know what he does week 1. He goes absolutely berserk, and you're going against a Washington football team that their secondary is going to look extremely different than last year. That front 7 is formidable for Washington, but that secondary, not the same. And so I'm going to look at a little bit more of the question marks on DFS, use that as a leverage spot against the field. But in season long, I'm going to focus a little bit more on the guys like the centerpieces in the offense and the continuity, especially because this year we're not going to have, or we haven't seen NFL football before Thursday.
Reid Fowler joining us, the Boardwalk kind of hotline on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at Reid T. Fowler for year-long NFL DraftKings analysis, as well as the PGA Tour as well. He's always great on that as well. Reid, speaking of the Eagles, I want to know your perspective on in the past. We know Zach Ertz has been a volume guy, right? He's a guy who gets a lot of touches, a lot of targets, but the expectation is now those targets might be a little less with Reagor, with Deshaun Jackson, Dallas Goedert next year in the system. You have Greg Ward potentially being a more heavily used slot guy. So do you feel like Zach Ertz's value in fantasy has diminished at all?
A little bit, right? A little bit. We've seen his targets go down year over year. The health is always an issue with Zach Ertz, or just tight ends in general, right? Tight ends get hurt more than wide receivers do because of the nature of their business and the nature of their where they usually operate, which is across the middle, right? And so we see that the health of Zach Ertz, he's a little bit older. But having said that, if you look at this game specifically, he's totaled 115 yards and a touchdown in those 2 games last year against Washington. And Goddard, if there is a tight end handcuff in fantasy and season long, Goddard is that one guy, right? We talk about Alexander Mattison or Tony Pollard or Kareem Hunt, for instance, as the backup running backs that if they were propelled into a RB1 or that starting role because something their teammate got hurt in front of them, they would be a top 5 player or considered a number 1 player for every single week. Dallas Goedert is that tight end for Zach Ertz, right? That if anything happened to Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert will be a top 5 tight end, potentially a league winner. But having said that, we know Carson Wentz loves Zach Ertz. So especially in this game, I'm looking at Ertz to have his value and keep that there. But yeah, over the course of the season, Jalen Reagor is going to need time to ramp up. We don't know the health of Alshon Jeffrey, of even Deshaun Jackson, for instance, right? And so looking at Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, this tight end match, this tight end duo, I really, really like their chances this year.
Let's walk around the league a little bit with some different players, because I know a lot of people, whether I see people asking our shows or asking other places, I feel like the same handful of names keep coming up. We want to give some clarity for people out there. I got to start with the guy in New England, though, Cam Newton. Cam claims that we're going to see something that we've never seen from him in this Patriots offense. I don't even know how to interpret that, because Cam Newton spent so many years, and let's be realistic, a dumbed down NFL offense, that almost anything that's more involved than what we saw in Carolina might be an upgrade.
Yeah, like when you talk about Josh McDaniels and you think about what he's done in the past, right, with the Patriots, but also with the Broncos, with Tim Tebow, that was his guy when he was the head coach for Denver. He drafted Tim Tebow. You start to think, you get really excited, right? You get really excited for a guy like Cam Newton, who's an athletic freak. I mean, you're seeing that type of body and that skill set on a quarterback is something that you always have to be excited for. And this guy's got a chip on his shoulder, right? That's I'm not, breaking any news here, any hot takes, is that Cam Newton, he wants to torch the NFL, and he's looking at that schedule. We saw that when, that video came out on social media where he's like, this team passed on me, this team passed on me. So I think what we're going to see from Cam Newton is maybe a quarterback that's going to harken back to the years of 2011 where he was a rookie and he just, came on the scene and absolutely torched the NFL. I'm extremely excited. You got to think that his weapons in that wide receiving room is a little bit, down to what, like, Carolina's got really good receivers over there. But I'm excited for someone like Cam Newton to be in a system now where he feels like he can flourish. And we can never count out the Patriots. That's always a losing proposition when you think that they're down and they're 7-point underdogs, whatever it is, or not 7-point, excuse me. They're going to be underdogs throughout the season in terms of where they were before. That's something that I'm very interested to see, and especially if you got Cam Newton late in rounds in season long, you got to be excited for this guy.
Let's head over to Baltimore. What do you do with the running back position? They drafted J.K. Dobbins, is being very highly lauded coming out of training camp. You already had that Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards kind of, not a dual operation, but Gus Edwards did have over 700 rushing yards last year. So what do you do with the Baltimore rushing situation? Do you jump on a guy? Do you stay away from it?
So for DFS, I actually like attacking running backs, maybe in this game specifically. So on the Cleveland side, I'll just mention them really quickly. Is Nick Chubb, right, is someone that's not being rostered quite a bit in this game because we think Baltimore has a strong run defense. But that's exactly what you can leverage, is these good running backs against good defensive units. A lot of people shy away from that, but I think Nick Chubb is going to be in a nice spot. But if you look at the Ravens backfield, you gotta be excited about J.K. Dobbins. I'm not worried about the depth chart, that he's fourth on the depth chart. I think that's just semantics. That's what they're trying to do. But if you look at just what Mark Ingram can do in this backfield, and we saw it last year, is that he's a guy that can get you 15 touches, probably nothing in the passing game, so he doesn't have a huge ceiling, but 15 touches against a Cleveland run defense that was not great last year. The one thing that makes me a little bit less excited about this game specifically is that Jim Woods came over with Kevin Stefanski, and Woods has actually been a solid.
And we just lost Reid there. He just disappeared there for a moment. We'll try to get him back there to finish his point there, because he literally just dropped in the middle of his point there. Don't forget about the DraftKings, up to $100 million in giveaways for their free-to-play Survivor Pool Week 1. Fans can compete for a shot at $1 million by entering the $1 million Survivor Pool with DraftKings. I think we got Reid back here. Reid, is that you? We get you back now?
Yeah, still here. Sorry about that.
It's all good, yeah.
There, but so I was just talking really quickly about that Cleveland defense. Joe Woods, his time in San Francisco and his time in Denver, he was really good against mobile quarterbacks and against running defense. And so Cleveland, I think a lot of people are sleeping on Cleveland. I think they're going to be a team that, a lot of people were excited about in the past, in the preseason, and they got burned. But I think Cleveland's on the uptick.
And one more before I let you go, and I know we're running out of time here, but slot receivers. Last year a guy like Reagor was a huge value in DFS. One guy who's a slot receiver that I'm looking at very closely is Larry Fitzgerald because of all the weapons on that offense. So who are maybe some slot receivers people can get with some value this year?
Yeah, I mean, one that I think a lot of people are kind of talking about, but still is someone that you should keep your eye on is Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson is in Los Angeles with the Rams. He's going to be someone that's, backing up Cooper Kupp a little bit, right? Which is weird to say that is someone that you like, but the Rams love him. The Rams love Van Jefferson. He's the number 3 receiver right now. I think if anything happens to Cooper Kupp, or even if it doesn't, right, that offense, again, looking at some of these offenses that disappointed last year but still have the correct scheme and the coaching staff around them, I think Van Jefferson is one guy that you got to look at. And then Juju Smith-Schuster moving back into the slot position. He played out last season. Didn't do so hot, but he gets Ben Roethlisberger back and he moves back to his natural position. So those are some of the guys that I'm looking at.
Follow him on Twitter at Reid T. Fowler for all of your NFL, fantasy football, DFS advice, and also the PGA Tour as well. As all guests, he appeared today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Reid, always appreciate the time and working through the tech difficulties there.
All right, Josh, take care.
Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. We'll check the text board one more time, 609-403-0973 on the other side, plus some NFL picks for this Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
We got Yankees, Orioles coming up after the top of the hour, so we'll go rapid fire on some of the NFL stuff. So quick NFL news to run down here. With the Eagles, John Clark is reporting from NBC Sports Philadelphia that Lane Johnson will be a pre-game, game time decision. Apparently the ankle situation was something that they wanted to clean up to prevent further problems down the road, but they're not 100% sure he'll be ready to go for Week 1. He would definitely be ready to go for Week 2. Dalvin Cook signed a 5-year contract extension that ties him to the Vikings for the next 6 seasons. 5 years, $62.5 million. Alvin Kamara gets a 5-year contract extension, so he'll be in New Orleans over the next 6 years. Cooper Kupp has signed a 3-year contract extension with the Rams, so he is locked up as well. Everyone's getting contract extensions in the NFL. It's absolutely wild. Couple predictions for the NFL season to run down with you real quick. I got the Patriots winning the AFC East. I think the Bills making the playoffs, but I got them going through a rough schedule this year. I have the Steelers winning the AFC North. The Ravens, though, making the playoffs. They're at 11-5, right behind the Steelers. They lose a tiebreaker. I got the Titans winning the AFC South. The Colts making the playoffs. And the only team out of the West I have making from the AFC is the Chiefs. In the NFC, I have the Eagles winning the NFC East. The Cowboys, though, make the playoffs at 10-6. I have the Bucks winning the NFC South. The Saints making the playoffs as well from the South. From the NFC North, I only have one team making the postseason. It's the Vikings. I have the Packers missing the playoffs, but going 9-7. I have 2 teams from the NFC West making it this year. I have the 49ers winning division and the Seahawks getting into the playoffs. And currently, if I project out everything according to my own projection system, which I've been doing for longer than I'm willing to admit, because it's kind of embarrassing that I was 13 years old, more interested in football games than actually talking to people. But either way, my Super Bowl projection right now is Bucks versus Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Those who are asking, I only have the Eagles getting to the divisional round of the playoffs and them losing to Seattle. They do not get to the NFC Championship game according to my projections. So there you go. A little quick rundown. I have run down my NFL picks for you tomorrow for those who want to throw a couple odds and bits on the games tomorrow. So I got the Panthers +3 at home versus the Raiders. I believe that Matt Rule will have those guys more prepared versus the Raiders. I think that Matt Rule's used to having no preseason because all those years in college. John Gruden, not so much. I have the Steelers -6 versus the Giants on Monday Night Football. Bucks versus Saints over 47.5. Those are my little gambling picks for you as well. As I mentioned earlier, I got the Eagles winning 24-20 over Washington tomorrow. A couple other picks around the NFL. I have the Bills beating the Jets. I think the Bills are a playoff team, but they got some stumbling blocks that go throughout the season. I think the Vikings can get past the Packers for week 1. Ravens, Browns. I think the Ravens are going to blow out the Browns. The Browns have so many guys injured on defense right now. I don't think the Browns can stop the Ravens if their life depended on it. I have the Colts beating the Jags. No surprise there. I have the Lions beating the Bears. I think the Bears are going to be a mess this year. Matt Nagy might be fighting for his job this year. I think it's going to be an incredible game between the Seahawks and the Falcons, but I think the Seahawks pull it out. I think Jamal Adams got an incredible impact for Seattle this year. Watch out, Cam Newton might be comeback player of the year in New England. Watch out for the Bengals and the Chargers. That might be a Bengals sneaky win at home there. Cardinals, 49ers. 49ers are going to win it, but Cardinals will make it much closer than you think. Buccaneers, Saints will be a shootout. Like I said, go with the over. I think the Cowboys and the Rams are also going to be a shootout as well. Monday Night Football, I got the Steelers and the Titans both winning those games. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you on game night this Monday night, 6 p.m., leading you up to Monday Night Football right here on 97.3 ESPN.